When it comes to a garage space, this is often meant to be one of the most functional spaces in your home, but it often tends not to be, and that's something I hate because things lay around, they're untidy. But today's DIY solution will solve that problem, and I've got a few tips and tricks that'll take care of that. Our DIY project for today is a bike rack. Now this is one that will look not only stylish in your garage, but even in your home if you stay in an apartment block or something like that. So what you'll need for this project is a sander, cordless drill, pocket hole jig, piece of timber, a pencil, a tape measure, a few screws, a soft felt pad or rubber pad, glue, spray paint, and a drop sheet. Now your first step is to take some measurements. You want to assess the space where your bike will reside, and you want to take some measurements of the length, the height, as well as the depth, most importantly. The depth will ensure that your bike stays off of the wall, but is easy to access as well. So we've assessed the space where our bike will reside, and we've taken all the measurements. We have 1.7 meters in length, 950 millimeters in height, and most importantly, a depth of 220 millimeters. Now, something to consider when you're about to cut the top piece for your depth is that the 220 millimeters is exactly from the wall to the middle of the bike. So you need to give an additional space. I'm going to give an extra 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters just to ensure that there is a gap between the wall and the bike. Now we can cut out using either a miter saw or a jigsaw, and worst case, you can use a hand saw. Now with our top beam now cut, we can measure out our back support piece and then our 45-degree cut. Eventually we'll have a strong triangular structure which will support our bike. Now something to keep in mind for the back piece is to ensure that you have some space on the top and the bottom in order to secure it to the wall. So I'll add 50 millimeters to the top and bottom for these measurements. With our two pieces now cut, which will form the backing as well as our top support piece, we can now cut our 45-degree angle. Now, you all remember high-grade mathematics, right? So half breadth times height will give you exactly what you need. But if you're not good with maths, a simple tape measure. Now you can see I've marked out 5 centimeters on the top and bottom, and then I'm going to place our top bracket like that, and then just take a tape measure. Now, once we've got the measurements for our 45-degree cut, I'm going to place it in our miter saw, adjust my miter saw to 45 degrees, and then simply cut along those lines. We got our 45-degree cut, and you'll see when we insert it, our structure is starting to come together quite nicely. Now, before we can secure everything together, we need to ensure that we've got an area or recess so that our bike can sit on this in order to keep it secure in place. Now, in order to measure out and mark off where we need to cut the recess, we keep in mind the measurements of the depth of our bike, which was 22 centimeters. Anything above that is safe area for you to cut your recess. Now I'll be using my miter saw, and I'll be using this wing nut to adjust the depth at which I'll be cutting the recess. So to prepare the recess cuts, I've got our piece of wood which we'll be using as our top support, and you can see I've marked out exactly where we'll cut our recess cuts. Something important to keep in mind is that you need to cut within each of these lines just to ensure that you've got the right area covered, as well as the depth that you want to cover. Now the depth you can adjust using this wing nut, and ensure that you're not cutting more than 50% down the thickness of the wood. Otherwise, you'll compromise its strength. Now you can see over here, I've placed a sacrificial fence. That just ensures that our piece of wood that we are cutting is moved forward to ensure that the blade goes right through from front to back. To clean the recess, make use of a chisel to remove any excess wood. With our recess cuts now complete and we're ready for assembly, I'm going to show you how we're going to secure everything. I'm going to be using two different types of systems. One is a pocket hole system, and then a simple ordinary screw system. I'm going to mark and then drill out our pilot holes. I'm going to be making pilot holes from the back here as well as from the top here to secure our 45-degree cut. I'll be making our pocket holes for our top piece to secure onto our backing brace, and then I'll mark and drill 2 pilot holes to secure to the wall. Now when it comes to securing our 45-degree cut, it's a good time to mention the different lengths of screws that we'll be using. Because we've got different angles and different lengths and thickness of our wood, we need to decide exactly the type and length of screws that we're going to be using. I'm using self-tapping screws, and you can see they're different lengths. Again, we'll glue and then secure together. That looks great. So with everything secured, we can move on to sanding before we start spray painting. Now, a few things to keep in mind. If this is going to be an indoor application, you may want to fill the holes, but because this is going in our garage, I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm using an orbital or eccentric sander with a medium grit sandpaper to cover most of the surfaces. For those hard to reach places, I've used my hand and a bit of sandpaper. I'm using a matte black color for the spray paint, which is a paint and primer and a 2-in-1. It is fast drying and is good for indoor and outdoor use, and works on wood, metal, plastic and more. After 2 light coats, our bike rack is now dry. We can turn our attention to focus on when we actually mount our bike onto the bike rack. And for that, I'm using a piece of felt. Now, the felt has a self-adhesive backing, but you can choose to use some glue to apply it. But in this case, we're just going to cut a piece to size as I have here, slot it into the recess and simply trim the excess with a utility knife. When it comes to mounting your bike rack, there's something to consider. One being the height at which you're going to mount it. So what we're going to do is place it at the height that we'd prefer. We're then going to take a spirit level, just ensure that it is level. Then finally, take a little hammer and give a light tap to the screws, just to give a marker of where you'll drill your pilot holes. Amazing, super easy and super quick to make in your home. So why don't you get your kids' bikes off of the floor and put them on the wall. And remember folks, be practical when it comes to your garage. Use things in and around your home like foam or rubber tubing as door bumpers for your car doors, or install a motion sensor to save on electricity. And remember, you can never have enough storage.